All right, now on data point, which helps us to talk about what the Salaries and Remuneration Commission has gazetted rather. At the moment, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission has announced a range of 7 to 10% pay rise for the state officers and public officers. This will be implemented across 2 years. So what does that mean? Does this have to 3.5 to 5 years? We'll be getting an answer from the chairperson who is already here in studio. The cost for the current financial year is 21.7 billion shillings. Of course, it is effective from the 1st of July, which is the start of last month. Now, this is how that 21.7 billion shillings will be distributed. The teachers will be receiving up to 9.5 billion shillings. They take the lion's share of about 44%. Uniformed and disciplined forces take just slightly over half of that, which is 4.5 billion shillings. The county governments, these are officers that work in the county governments, are taking 4 billion shillings. And the civil service is taking 1.8 billion shillings. Something more that you need to know is that those state officers in the executive level, these are the president, the cabinet, and of course the persons that lead independent commissions. They're getting up to 126 million shillings. Parliament state officers is 78.8 billion shillings. County state officers is 408.9 million shillings, and other public officers are taking home some 745 million shillings, which is the share from the 21.7 billion shillings. We'll be back here, but first let's hear from the chairperson of SRC, that is Lane Mingich. First of all, good evening. How are you doing? Good evening. Great. And let's start from that point. Behind you is the president and the deputy president. You told us that the salaries have not been increased because they expressed themselves. How did this happen? Was it just that public pronouncement that they spoke at an event, or it was followed with a written word or a letter?
During public participation, we do ask anybody who would like to give feedback to actually send us memoranda. In the same breath, we also engage all the employing entities. So for the presidency, it goes through the head of public service. So that is how we get all citizens to actually express their feedback to the commission. So that is how we got their feedback.
So the head of public service wrote to you and said the president or the deputy would want to be left out of this?
Yes.
What if that changes after 1 year and they think, no, we want it? Is it something that is possible? Because your Gazette notice says there's what is effective 1st of July 2023 and 1st of July 2024.
Once we have set that pay, remember we do have this pay we have set for 2-year period. So once we have set, that is fixed for that period. So when we receive, because remember when we get all this feedback, then we then go back to the calculations and see how much money is available. So if we have then said there is no increase, then it remains for that period.
Okay, so even if they change their minds, this is not changing at least up until June 2025?
Yes, it will not change for 2 years.
All right. And then when you look at the allocations, for instance, the teachers' community or service is receiving up to 9.5 billion shillings. How did you get to that point of deciding how much goes to which institution?
There are several factors we look at. First of all, there is the numbers. So when you look at TSC, for example, it looks huge. But actually, the percentage increase is not higher than the rest. So that one really just speaks about the number of teachers that we employ. And that's why you get a bigger percentage. So we do take a percentage that depends on, first of all, where that institution is against the target market position. Our market positioning is at 50th percentile. So if you are below that percentile, by a certain percent, then that is how we look at. So we look at that as a key factor to determine, of course, starting with the amount available, which is the 21 billion. From the 21 billion, then we look at how many employees are in which sector, where they are against the target position of 50th percentile.
Right.
We also look at how far they are relative to others, because this is also about harmonization of pay. So taking all those factors together to ensure equity and fairness in pay, and to ensure that we attract and retain the requisite skills in the public service, then all that, we take that into account now to apportion and allocate what money goes to which sector.
Okay. And of course, 7 to 10%. to be implemented across 2 financial years. So what is effective for this financial year? Is it the 7 or is it the 3.5 to 5?
Now, you can see the amount is spread equally, more or less, between the 2 years. So when we say an average, because remember it's an average, it means some will be slightly higher, even that figure of 10%. So in some sectors, you will find that it's slightly higher, in some is slightly lower. So the 7 to 10 being an average means that some will be lower, higher, but you can here say divide by 2. So that could roughly give you what it looks like. Okay. But again, remember, it's an average. Yes.
Maybe a quick question before you move on to the other stories. So there are those that will be retiring any time from now. For instance, someone may be retiring this August, but then there's a PERAS that is being implemented across 2 years. So what happens to them, and especially in the calculation of your pension?
When you retire, every pension scheme has its own rules on how your pension will be paid. But the basic salary that will apply is not the futuristic. It is the salary at the point at which you leave service. But obviously, each pension scheme has a formula on how that works. But it definitely cannot be based on a futuristic salary. It has to be what you are earning at the point of retirement.
Okay, so if you retire before the end of the current financial year, so then your benefit will be half of 7 to 10%?
Yes, that is the increase.
Yes.
Because remember, now it is implemented over a 2-year period. So if you apply the percent this year, that becomes your basic salary. So at the point of exit, then you use that basic salary, not for the following year. Okay. Because that hasn't happened.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. But is that the mistake of the work, or is the mistake of the unavailability of resources?
There is no mistake. There is no mistake, and the availability of resources, yes, plays a very important role. That is why it is actually spread over 2 years. If there was adequate funds, we could easily have said pay over 1 year.
Right.
But also remember that we have a 4-year review cycle, which then allows government to spread pay increases over a 4-year period. So it doesn't mean that we have to do once. Okay. And that is standard. Sometimes it even spread over the entire 4 to allow proper planning and also that we don't take a huge increase at the same time.
So tell me this. So the former president's retirement benefits are pegged on not retirement benefits, but their monthly pension.
The pension.
Or what they receive is pegged on the serving president. So now the serving president has said, I do not want an increment. So what happens to former President Uhuru Kenyatta? Is it 80% of what the current president has rejected, or what he is getting?
What is rejected doesn't exist, because once you have expressed, once we have set, that is what is set.
Okay.
So whatever was there before cannot be used as a basis. Because remember, I said that those were proposals before we actually set.
Okay.
So what is valid is what the Commission has set.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Fair point. And of course, we'll continue that conversation with the chairperson of Salaries and Remuneration Commission. She will be here for the evening to answer your questions. You can share them with us at Citizen TV Kenya at Sam Gituku. The hashtag to use is tonight, or you may want